Very nice to be here, everyone. And this is my second time attending a HITLAB, and I'm very happy to be sharing this with Hira. And it's her first time at HITLAB too, so just go easy with us. So Hira, documentation, clinical trials, can you give the audience a little description of what it is you do in your work and the type of indications, and start with that, and then we'll get into documentation and how we can help that with digital health.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me here, and very excited to be discussing on this topic. Hello, like you heard, my name is Hira. I have worked for several years in pediatrics clinical research, on all different types of clinical research, particularly focusing on opiate use disorder during pregnancy and the perinatal outcome. That was the majority of my career. I have also had few years of oncology research, particularly in the preventative side of multiple myeloma. And currently, my research area focuses on Alzheimer's prevention at McCance Center. So working in all these different populations, the different research focus, one thing that has been like a pretty obvious theme is about data collection, the burden of data collection and database management, and particularly the type of data that's patient self-reported. And for example, in cancer research, to give you an example, like for example, for an immunotherapy, patients would be, if they have some arm in the trial that requires patient taking medication home, then we have to just rely on patient report of taking those medications. So those are very important. And depending on what stage of the disease the patient is at, they may have some difficulties with taking them, adhering to the documentation of. And so currently, most common way of doing it is sending them a drug diary for a month, and then hoping that they document that. And then when they come back, they have to bring back the remaining medication as well as the drug diary back for us to be able to appropriately document and just close that month's medication adherence. And so we have had a lot of challenges, patients forgetting to bring those, and forgetting to bring not just the drug diary, but also the bottle of the medications and stuff like that. So
hard to reconcile.
Yeah, so yeah. So that puts a lot of burden on our nurses, our clinical research coordinators, providers.
Yourself as a PI?
So as a manager.
Yeah, as a manager,
yes.
Okay.
So that definitely, it's just like, it reflects back on me, and it's just like, how do we reconcile it? And it's like, now there's always like ton of calls, like, so there's a lot of legwork that goes into maintaining that kind of data. And so any kind of digitization on that aspect would be really helpful, for one example.
Yeah, you mentioned you did some work with a substance use disorder
populations.
And so would that have been, where they would have to take medication?
Absolutely, yeah.
So when I hear about substance use disorder, I sometimes think of oxycodone and the opiate problem too, right?
Yeah.
And I have some researchers that, and I'll just give you a quick background of what our company does in the world of digital health. So to help alleviate and bring a lot of clarity to, here is, the administration legwork of doing this manual reconciliation, the paper diaries or the whatever diaries that are subjective from the patient. We have what's called, there are tools out there, digital tools such as smart packaging that have sensors built into them. You wouldn't really know they're in there. When I say built in, it's not like a big Lego set like that. Flat printed sensors or optical sensors that will actually do the drug dosing accountability live and in real time and take away that burden from the patient. You know, it's like when you do go to the doctor and they say, well, Joanne, how many glasses of wine do you have in a week? And I say, oh, what's a good answer? 2. And they'll say, no, you should really only have 1. I'll be like, oh, darn, good thing I didn't tell her I had 6. So these sorts of things, right? So it takes that burden away from the patient, but it also brings, like for your care team, just so much more relief, right? Because there's already real world data out there that shows self-report and recall bias are way off when you compare it to these digital health solutions. Yeah. So it's kind of exciting, right? When you can know that digital health can do these sorts of things. And like Rama had mentioned previously about the car, the Ford way back when and now today, and other speakers have mentioned about let's modernize and actually, you can talk, but it's time for action, right? Absolutely. So eliminate that kind of paper stuff and bring more digital responsibility, I guess, to a trial, right?
That's very true. That's very true. And thank you for bringing up that like substance use aspect of it too, because when we try to do clinical trials on that population, particularly with pregnant women, if there is like, to give you an example of that, like oxycodone, not the oxycodone, but like there is like a, opioid maintenance therapy medications like Suboxone or things like that. You know, so if it's an oral medication that you need to take every day, for example, we have done a trial like that, and then there was one with like, the injection kind that they got once a week, but then some patients in another arm got like a bottle, the packet that we need to take them. And so that was very challenging because it's a controlled substance, and there's a chance for abuse. And the patients, if patients miss their next appointment, like you won't be able to do urinalysis and things like that. So having something like that would absolutely change the game.
Right. Yeah. So we have some studies going on, and it's related to post-surgery where they're dispensed, a narcotic for pain, right? And so I look at it kind of like this, as if I was the patient, and yes, I was a patient once, but when you wake up in the middle of the night in pain, and really, we're not really going to pull out a cell phone, a diary, or anything. You just want that pill, bottle, or box, or whatever it is, and you just want to take that and go back to sleep. So then the next morning you wake up and you go, yeah, I think that was at like 1 o'clock, I don't know. And it's this type of data and this type of burden that you take off the patient by using digital solutions, right? And so then we get into something called remote patient monitoring, which is a real big thing nowadays, based on, obviously, the last few years that we see these decentralized kind of hybrid models. And that's another area where it's of great benefit to researchers and teams and management teams that they can see this. Yes, real time, near time, it's a whole different discussion there, but it also helps to see that when something is going awry, that the care teams can reach out and say, okay, we see that you've not been, taking your medicines, right? Those sorts of things. So the remote patient monitoring is another aspect that is, again, bringing the care teams and the patients much closer together. And therefore, maybe less loss to follow up, less dropouts, and maybe better retention for patients, right? Because that's really hard to get a patient, isn't it?
It is.
Right? Yeah, so when you get one, you want to keep them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's remote patient monitoring. And I don't know how they do it today, like remotely, other than with digital, right? I think maybe mobile apps, or they call in or something like that. But
a lot of it is just like based on phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
still.
again, another burden really to a patient, right? So anyway, there's all kinds of digital health tools that can help. But if you look at what your costs would be for, like, for your team to do, you have to report, I think, right? Like to FDA or to fill out, like when the drug comes back and you're doing reconciliation with your paper, and then you have to put that to, you have to file that somehow, right? You report
Yes.
it or something?
So the way it goes in is like it turns into a protocol deviation.
Okay.
And so that is like in the number of protocol deviation kind of like, adds up,
Okay.
if there is no reconciliation, timely reconciliation. So there is that aspect to that, like, and that can be kind of like a ripple effect of like, just getting to the regulatory folks. So, and in addition to that, in terms of costs too, it requires significant amount of legwork on part of our staff, right? The CRCs are doing a lot of work just to reconcile. That's like one simple thing. Nurses are making phone calls, like making sure, reminding them, not getting a hold of, frustration, all that.
Oh, and then you got to
to
document all that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a manual documentation of everything, and so especially in a drug trial, like. Drug trial, that it turns into a lot of different, aspects being affected.
Yeah. All right, I think we're already up to 15 minutes. Jason, thank you, and thank you, audience. If you have any questions, Hira and I will be out there if you would like to continue a chat.